Good evening, everybody. I will call the Monday, November 21st Board of Trustees meeting to order. Clerk Vasquez, can we please have the roll call?
Yes, Mayor Rogan,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Farrell, Trustee Edding, Trustee Elson, Trustee Delman, Trustee Dottie, and Trustee Williams.
Thank you. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We must acknowledge with respect as non-native people that the land on which we stand, live, and learn is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We also recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that made up the state of Colorado. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Trustee Elson. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there anything anybody would like to amend on the agenda? Vote.
And the motion passes unanimous.
Thank you. Take a reflective moment of silence. It's been a rough couple days for a lot of people. And I just wanted to acknowledge that and encourage us to treat each other with extra kindness during these times. Thank you. So now's the time for audience business. We'll do the folks in the room first and then see if anybody on the Zoom would like to speak. So if you'd like to speak, come on up, state your name and address for the record, please, and you will have 3 minutes. Anybody in the room care to speak? No? Okay. Anybody on the line on the Zoom care to speak?
Yes, Keith Chatfield.
Hey, Mr. Great. Your address for the record, please, and then we'll get started.
My address is at 2002 Blue Yonder Drive here in Fort Collins. And I'm here with, I believe Dave Wickham should be here. Dave, are you out there?
I don't see him.
Well, we had a presentation proposal for a cash in lieu on eight building lots. And it's going to be very difficult to get through with 3 minutes, but I'll try to plow through as quickly as I can. We were hoping that between Dave and I, we could actually use 6 minutes because there is a bit of material here. But if that's okay.
We each have 3 minutes, and so now you're down to 2 minutes and 10 seconds.
Okay. Let me go ahead and share my screen then. Okay. So let me rather quickly then, cash in lieu, we're making a proposal for cash in lieu for building lots that we own, Dave Wickham and I own in Lions Valley Park. Go ahead and move forward. So Dave and I are general contractors. I'm a former resident planning to return to Lions Valley Park. Dave is a longtime Lions resident. The situation in Lions Valley Park is that Lions Valley Park was approved for development in February 1986, and each home required a dedication of water from one Colorado Big Thompson water share at permitting. The cost of Colorado Big Thompson has skyrocketed. Water dedication cost is now 23 times what it was in 1986, and when adjusted for inflation. Staff analysis has concluded town has adequate supply of water taps to cover our 8 lots. We propose a payment to the town in lieu of a Colorado Big Thompson water dedication. We can go through this shorter time. We just won't need to talk about that. But basically, raw water dedication is a way for the town to assure adequate water supply is provided for future development. And the previous gold standard for water dedication was Colorado Big Thompson water shares to be dedicated. However, that is not really the case anymore. Many neighboring communities have moved away from Colorado Big Thompson water share dedication for a number of reasons. It's a very expensive dedication. It penalizes future residents and homeowners with added unnecessary costs. It sends money out of town and makes housing less affordable and leads to gentrification. This slide here is a historical description of the actually the cost of Colorado Big Thompson water. As you can see back
Sorry,
in
Mr.
19...
Sheffield, your time's up.
Oh, the slide's not changing.
Excuse me?
I said your 3 minutes has expired, but I think we have Mr. Wickham here, yeah?
What we're told collectively.
You have
is we would
6.
get
We would have 8 minutes actually.
you tell me, we're still on the first slide. The slides aren't proceeding.
Yeah, Mr. Sheffield, your slides haven't been advancing.
Oh, that's unfortunate because yes, I'm on a slide here. That's interesting. So I'd say I shared my screen. My screen is on slide 4.
You can, why don't you, you can send the slides over to Clerk Vasquez and she can forward them to the board after the meeting. But in the meantime, Mr. Wickham, would you like to state your name and address for the record and have your 3 minutes?
My name's Dave Wickham. I live at 812 Mountain Drive here in
Push the
Downs.
middle button.
There you go. My name's Dave Whitcomb. I live at 812 Mountain View Drive here in Lyons. And I'd like to give my time to Keith so he can just finish the presentation.
We don't do that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we follow the, I'll start your time over, but just so you know that it's just so that everybody who comes before us operates under the same rules.
I understand that. We've been trying for a couple of meetings now to get on an agenda item. We were told we were on an agenda item this week and then we got pushed out of an agenda item. So I'm not sure exactly where Keith left off here, but
You might go to the next slide.
yeah.
So Dave, we're on the situation, the graph.
This screen.
Oh. Hey Keith, can you go to the next slide?
The cash and lieu solution.
So there you can see the lower left side there, what your neighbors are doing as far as cash and lieu. And they're listed there along Fort Collins, Loveland, and Berkeley, what they're accepting for cash and lieu payments instead of requiring CBT shares. And then that, Keith has done a bunch of calculations on the right to show what different towns are doing and how they're coming up with those amounts. So can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, here's what we're proposing, and we're trying to find a fair and economical way to come up with a number. So one would just be an arbitrary rate, which doesn't really make any sense, based on the Macintosh. That's kind of what the town uses for economic benefit. If we average the towns that we showed on the previous slide, it would come to 24,440. Or if we set it up, basically what Longmont's doing, that would take it to $29,100, and that's what we're proposing to pay the town as cash in lieu versus providing a share of CBT. So
And one more.
there's one more slide, please. So there's an opportunity here because there are some excess water shares that the town has come up with. There's 8 lots that we have market lots left. There's not a lot of lots left. If I go buy a share of CBT from a farmer somewhere, it's a journal entry down at Northern Water, the town doesn't see any money. So this is an opportunity for the town to say, hey, let's just cash and lieu in these 8 lots. Let's get some money and use it however the town sees fit to use it. And so we kind of pulled what the neighbors were doing, your neighbors, and then came up with what we thought was a reasonable proposal. So that's it.
It's on your.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
And if you'll have Keith send me those slides, I'll give them to the board.
And
Okay.
just so you know, we don't respond to audience business,
I understand.
but I do want to let you know that a cash in lieu policy is on our next meeting agenda. So we'll be talking about that. So
Okay.
you may want to tune in for that.
We will.
December 5th.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Anyone else on the line like to address the board tonight? I don't see
I don't see
anybody.
anyone.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Sergeant Chris Boulder County Sheriff's Report.
Right, good, everybody. I have a few things. So, last week I met with, Code Enforcement Officer Zach Burgess and, consulted with, Captain Bittman also too on some of the, just to get some clarifications on his duties and responsibilities and what he has the authority to do and not do here now. So, we kind of revamped that document a little bit. I know it went over to, Victoria for review. So we're kind of working on that just to get things cleared up on, getting everybody on the same page with the sheriff's office and what we can interconnect with and what we can't interconnect with. So there was some confusion there on the onset that we just didn't identify until it came out and down to it. So I going through that. We had another meeting today with block camera representatives and Cody Sergeant Sears was introduced to those folks and guided for the first section of me leaving and taking over that program. And also for a lot of the setup of the internal training through the sheriff's office and stuff like that. So cameras are still up and working good. I know that the system's really taken off. There's just so many front range towns and a long month getting ready to put a bunch in. Boulder's already got 30 of them. Town Superior is looking to put some in. So it's definitely a way of the future. We're catching a lot of folks from that. And me and Cody were talking prior to the meeting too, that once we get that fully up and running and start monitoring it, we'll be able to generate some stats off of that as well to bring back to the board. Speaking of stats, I do want to clarify from the last meeting when I gave you guys the monthly crime report, I told you, I answered a question about the total number of 237, if that was just in Lyons for all encompassing District 3. I was mistaken. So that is Lyons proper, not the outskirts. So it's pulled off of the Lyons zip code address. So there are some, some outskirts places that have a Lyons address, but 98% is here in town. So that should give you guys a better representation of what is actually going on in town. So I just wanted to make sure I clarified that for you guys. We picked up a new repeating case earlier today. So we're looking into that as well.
Exactly, a new bridge.
We're gonna promise you, justice will be served. We will find these guys.
This one was close to your camp.
I'm sorry.
This one was close to your camp.
Good.
Yeah.
We'll pull some data and see what we got. So, what it goes in tonight, right? Geared up for the holiday parade, getting all that ready to go. I think after the Thanksgiving break, I'll get with Dave and everybody and we'll go over our plans one more time. I know we sent Kim the IAP pretty much, the same as the Halloween parade. So, and we're fully staffed for this one as well. So we're very glad. And then, Mayor Rogan, you did ask me last week what my official last day is going to be. And it will be January 23rd, which is Monday. Yeah, we do the shift change on January 25th. And that's where our payroll breaks for a month and just based on time breaks and stuff, adjustments to go on to a different shift. I will be up here in Lyons on the 23rd. That's my last day. But then again, as I said, I won't be going far and I'm definitely leaving you guys in capable hands with Sergeant Sears. That is all I have for my report. I want to introduce Lynette Anderson, our co-responder. You guys asked and you shall receive. So take it over, Lynette.
Well, I didn't really prepare anything because I wasn't sure, like how long. I'm happy to do that. If you want more detailed, like in-depth stuff of what we're doing. But I started here in mid-May. So just been back building my presence, both with the sheriff's deputies and with folks in town. That's definitely coming along. I'm starting to get outreach from people in town on my personal social media. So we're looking at creating a Facebook page for the Lions co-responder. That way people have somebody to outreach, because there's been a lot of like, call 911 with this. It's like, so hopefully that'll help a little bit. Gosh, I've been responding to all kinds of different things. So mental health crises, substance use, homeless, parenting issues, aging in place, pretty much everything, just domestic violence. And mostly what we do is help if it's a crisis. We come up, we help support the deputies. We also support obviously the people that are in crisis. Do intensive case management as needed afterwards for as long as we kind of need to. Offer up resources, try and get people hooked up with just different whatever resources there might be out there. I come from a law enforcement background. I was park ranger for Fort County Parks for a long time, but I have aging services background as well. So I've been signing up a lot of people for free therapy with Senior Reach, which is for older adults. I did like 5 of those last week, so I'm pretty proud of that. I have business cards and I have like a postcard that just has some information as well. People can email us, they can call, they can leave a message on my work number here. I just as a, I think, because I know Victoria gets it, but I think my supervisor, Janine Hall, sends out like a report, like a quarterly report or whatnot that has what we do. So the Lions position, the way our data has been collected, anything that was in the town proper, I was listing as Lion, so I'm changing that as of October because I felt really 5 was not a whole lot, but it's a lot for more than what we used to do, but I'm way more busier than that. So anything that this position responds to is now going to be captured under Lions. So it's not to say that all of that's happening here in town. So, you know, if there's ever questions or anything about data, types of calls, how to get in touch with me, I do know that there's a big focus on kiddos and mental health right now, so I'm definitely involved in that conversation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. So, any questions for me?
Yeah, I have a quick question. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of data you'll accumulate over time and how that can be repurposed? I'd like for us to affect town policy to maybe help with some of these issues.
That's a really good question too, and so a lot of our data gets farmed out to something called Omni, and then they kick us back these reports. I'm trying to get them to look at more of mountain resources, and the fact that once you go west of 36, people think that we have live on dirt roads and you can't get up here. So there's it's a resource desert for food, for caregiving, for a lot of mental health resources. So I think that's one thing that might come up. And if there's a way to then allocate resources for that here in town. I'm not sure exactly what that data is going to look like. So if there's stuff that you guys are interested in, you can always ask and we can try and pull that out if there is. I can tell you there's a lot of aging in place that I've been responding to. There's a lot of older adults up here, and then a lot of parenting stuff.
Question. I'm curious, so. Oh. There's 3 of them on there. How does it work when you're called? So in other words, something comes into the dispatch and normally you've got somebody that's a sheriff that's here in town, but when is it appropriate for you to go to the scene or to on a call? How does that work?
So that starts usually with us as far as on the onset. There's not many calls that she's not going on actually, that we can find or use a resource to help from the co-responders. After that, it becomes the follow-up where they get nested and embedded in with the issue for the follow-up care or whatever else needs to happen we're kind of a one and done, we're there for the issue, the problem, and then we're moving on to the next one, and that's where they're picking up and doing a lot of the follow-up.
Okay.
And sometimes what happens too is because I'm sitting right where the deputies come and go. What happens a lot is they'll be like, hey, Anderson, I'm getting a call, and they'll be like, can you meet me up at? Or I'll say, hey, there's a call on CAD, I've been there before, or whatever, and they'll be like, can you meet me up there? So there's been a lot of, I don't know, like, not casual, but it kind of is. It's kind of like, hey, can you, and I've had Deputy Garcia in particular, he'll call me and say, hey, I'm on a call, can you come up here? And I'll be like, yeah, sure. So because I'm close and I have a fleet vehicle, it's just really easy for me to do that. So, and then this town is a little different, and because I live here as well, sometimes people come up to me like outside the library and say, hey, I have a question for you. People that have been past trustees refer people to me. So we're still trying to figure out how that works. A lot of it has been, hey, I don't know how to get SNAP benefits. Like, okay, that's pretty easy to figure out. So we're still kind of figuring that out too, because it's such a small town. It seems that this position might function a little bit differently. So stuff shows up on Facebook and then it's like my doorstep. And it's like, okay, well, let's see how we can help with this. So it's kind of a hodgepodge.
Almost the same issue of residents of Lyons calling officers directly.
Yeah.
Instead of going through the proper channels, it just becomes so small that, that we've trying to fight that ever since I've been here, and we'll continue to fight it. Under Cody, too.
Sorry in advance, Cody.
It's just a small town. It's great in some ways, but as I've always said, we need to know now.
No,
So, go through the right thing.
it was set to court.
Well, Lynette, I'm so glad to meet you. Thank you so much for coming out to meet with us. And thank you for everything that you do. You've heard nothing but great things about the work that you're doing, and it's really appreciated. I'm curious about, you talk about aging in place, and we have a pretty robust program for seniors. And when that data comes in about what we might be able to do better as a town, I'd be really interested to see it for sure.
For sure. So I was the aging services person in AAA here in town for a few years. So have a really good background on that. And I know Lisa Ramsey and Victoria just kind of help kind of tie in. A lot of these folks don't come out for lunches or stuff. So, but yeah, that's definitely something we can kind of keep an eye on.
And you had something?
I do. Trustee Dati at your last meeting had inquired about trying to better define for the public the role of LEAF and their mental health coordinator and you. So I was wondering, I think she was hoping to hear, for the public to hear, when is it appropriate to call her and when is it appropriate to contact you?
So even though I am a licensed therapist in the state of Colorado, I cannot be anybody's therapist in my job role. Cherie, however, is. So that's kind of the difference. So if somebody wants longer term therapy, it's going to be Cherie. If I run into them and I come upon them first, and I can refer them to Cherie, unfortunately, to their mental health clinician. I do therapy, but I'm not technically a therapist. So that's kind of the big cut and dry.
Would it be fair to say you're kind of in the acute position of someone having a crisis? She's more someone with long-term counseling needs.
Yeah, she's able to see somebody more long-term, yeah. But again, I do follow-ups, like I have somebody that I'm still following up from in May, and I just call to check in, and and then as needs come up, I can refer out. But yeah, that's kind of, I'm not anybody's technical therapist, like I don't bill.
Well, thank you again so much for coming.
Of course, appreciate it. Anytime you guys have questions, feel free to reach out.
Thank you. Okay, so we will move on then to our ordinances and public hearings. We have a lot of public hearings tonight. The first public hearing is adoption of the 2023 budget. Can we please have a staff report? I see Director Eyestone on the Zoom there.
Yes,
Good evening.
thank you. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see you all. So the staff report, I'll just keep it brief. We distributed a draft of the 2023 budget to the Board of Trustees on October 14th. And then we followed up with an all-day workshop on Saturday, October 22nd, where we briefly, well, not so briefly, actually went over the budget, and the departments got to present, and lots of questions back and forth, and really good discussion was had. And then after that, staff revised the budget with the following changes that kind of came out of some of those discussions. So I'll just briefly go over a couple of those changes that are currently in the proposed budget now. Personnel, we did increase that from a 4.5% increase to a 6% increase. And that's, really to help offset the inflationary that we're seeing this year and projected into next year. We also increased expenses in the general fund by $10,000 to reinstate the quarterly staff recognition program that has previously been in place and then was discontinued. We did increase expenses in the general fund by $1,500 for the Lions Arts and Humanities Commission, and those were in addition to the requests that were not previously included. We decreased expenses in the general fund by $20,000 to delay County Road 69 right-of-way permitting and trail capital project. We also decreased expenditures in the general fund by $13,000 to remove the goodwill grants from the budget. We increased expenses in the water and sanitation fund by $100,000, and that's for Summit's Longmont Water Service connection fee. And I will note this was just something that was missed in the budget before, but we did have offsetting revenue that was received for this 100% in 2021. So that was just an oversight. We decreased expenses in the water and sanitation fund by $30,000, and that was to remove a PRV replacement, which is a pressure reducing valve replacement, and additional bulk water capital expense, as Aaron determined that they were not needed in 2023. We did increase expenses in the water and sanitation fund by $14,500, and that was due to an inflationary increase by one of our professional services contractors of 8% that we found out after the draft budget was distributed. And then we also increased expenses in the water and sanitation fund by $84,000 for increased legal services that was a part of the arbitration that was implemented earlier this year. With all of those changes, I will mention that the projected fund balances are healthy, and they do meet the reserve of more than 3 months of operational expenditures. So that's definitely a good thing and something we always strive to do. And then with that, I can, open it up for the public hearing. That concludes all of the changes that were made from the draft.
Thank you, Director Eystone. Questions for Director Eystone?
I have a question just as far as the procedure. We've got two resolutions, 2298 and 2290. One is for the adoption of the budget, and one is for appropriation. Can we discuss why do we have to do an appropriation? It's Colorado state law, and then maybe discuss a little bit how binding the budget is. So can I ask Attorney Brandon those questions?
I think Director Eystone's already kind of geared up for it, so I'll let her take the first crack at it and fill in as necessary.
Sure. So, I'll answer your last question first. The budget is as binding as we amend it, right? So we can adopt it tonight. It's binding as of January 1, and then we can amend it as many times as we need to, however we need to, and however we see fit. So, for example, if we see additional expenditures come in, we can amend the budget to appropriate those additional expenditures. Or, if we need to make transfers from one fund to another, we can amend it at that time. We can amend it for the rollover funds, essentially, that happen. Typically, at the end of the year, you see it if you get more revenue in and you have less expenditures. So we can appropriate it then, but you can really amend it as many times as we need to. So go ahead.
That's a good question. If we decide not to spend money on something, does that require an amendment?
No, it does not.
Okay. All right.
And then for the double resolutions that you see, one of those is approving the actual budget in form. And then the other one by Colorado law is appropriating the funds. So you cannot spend funds in any given year without an appropriation adopted. Now, I have seen sometimes where those resolutions are put together and it's one resolution that adopts the budget and appropriates. But in this case, and it's even done that way, I think, with a lot of municipalities, they just do it as two separate resolutions. And I'll let Brandon maybe fill in if he has anything else.
So the budget is the plan for this is how we're going to spend the money, and the appropriation is the actual the funds are now available. They're two separate kind of actions. One is the planning aspect, and the other is making the funds available. So they're technically two discrete actions, which is why you often see them as two separate resolutions, if that makes sense.
So I have a number of questions. So one, it was on the consent agenda. It talks about professional services with Sierra Resources for renewable energy portfolio. And it references phase 2 for $15,000. But I didn't see any reference to that in the 23 budget. So if we I'm concerned about passing this now, but then that might be something that has to be added. How does that work? Attorney Dimon?
Yeah, so I'll handle this one. I think it's going to come up later tonight also about the same language that you have concern of. I have had a concern with as well. And so, let me kind of step this back and talk about how that contract works specifically. So the contract that's on the agenda tonight later for Tierra Consulting Services is a not to exceed contract for $25,000. That means, and we'll affirm it on the record, I think when the item is pulled later on, that we are agreeing to not spend any more than $25,000, regardless of what the scope of work says, until it's amended. Until there's an amendment to that contract permitting additional funds be spent. So we can have confidence in the fact that no more than $25,000 will be spent under that contract unless that contract is amended to add the additional $15,000 for phase 2. Hypothetically, if we're sitting here, maybe about this time next year and the contractor needs an additional $15,000 to start phase 2, and the Board of Trustees at that time feels it's a good idea to do so, the process to do that would be twofold. One, we would have to amend that contract itself to reflect the additional $15,000 of expenditures, it'd be a contract amendment. And then two, we'd have to amend the budget, to include the additional $15,000 as part of the planned expenditures of the town of Lyons to account for that. And so I'm not a huge fan of that scope of work and kind of, projecting that there's a phase 2 that could be possible in the future. But I think we can feel somewhat confident in the fact that one, it's a not to exceed contract, and two, that additional $15,000 is entirely subject to future appropriations. And so we're not bound to it because it's everything we do is bound to future appropriations.
Okay, thank you. All right, so there's that one. Let's see. I wanted to clarify the reinstate quarterly $10,000 for employee recognition. And if I read correctly, but I can't pull it up really quickly. If that's quarterly, should it not reflect in the budget as $40,000? So then should it say annually instead of quarterly? I just want to make sure I wasn't, because I'm perhaps misunderstanding.
No, it is a $10,000 annual appropriation to be used for quarterly recognition program at the discretion of the administrator.
Great, thank you for the clarification. All Okay, and then on the camping revenue. I noticed that there are a few things with camping. It didn't look like we were increasing our fees, that the 290,000 for 2022 is also what's listed for 23. And I was under the impression that we had talked about raising, it's the same with shelter and parking in Laverne and Johnson Park. So it didn't look like we actually went through an increase process. We're just passing what we already did for 2022.
For the budget, you're right, for the budget. The fee schedule is going to be considered next month, at which point we will bring the current fees and the proposed fees to the board for approval. And if those do go forward, we can always amend revenues, or, this is a pretty, like I said before, a pretty conservative revenue approach that way. But the plan is to bring forward that fee schedule next month for you all to review.
Awesome. But then my second question to that is, we had talked about potentially doing setting up a dry camping program in Bone Park or Second Avenue lot. And I was curious if we should be considering any funds for that, perhaps signage, marketing, any, potential construction that might need to change a little bit to allow for, a Sprinter van to overnight. And then we could charge a fee for that. So is that something that we should include now, or would you want to bring that back to us as a future?
Great question. I would recommend including it in the future. For one, we don't know how much it's going to cost to do those, and we don't know necessarily, what it's going to entail. And two, the Parks Fund, if you remember, is quite slim, so we didn't get to include any of the capital expenditures. But what we might be able to do is, with any increases in fees, offset some of those expenses in the future. So my recommendation would be to review that at a later date and get some more concrete costs for that.
Okay, super. Then special events. We've had Venus de Miles, and I didn't see that listed. And it was really, it appeared extremely successful. I don't know what it was on the revenue side, but should we have something in the line item about Venus de Miles under special events?
We don't specifically detail out each event. There's a line item in the Parks Fund for special events, which includes all sorts of events, but we don't have specific line items. There might be for some special events, like the Parade of Lights, I believe, might have one, but typically we lump a lot of those in together in one account. But we definitely are planning on that in the future.
Special event permit. And so until you get it, you can't really count it. So we only count the town sponsored events individually.
So in the past, when we did, what was it? Good old days. It was
Outdoor games,
yes.
town sponsored. I mean, it was ours.
So it's a very different thing. Okay.
All that we get out of Venus de Miles would be whatever they pay for special use for or special event permit.
Okay, got it. Okay, I'm almost done.
You're okay.
Museum. Did we ever get any information about the museum and what the plan is for that? Unless I may have missed it, but I don't think I saw anything in there.
We did get their financials. Victoria has them. I believe she is reviewing them. Currently, the museum funding is appropriated and included in the budget. And I believe, it can be, that doesn't mean that that's how it has to be spent. And keep in mind, by adopting these budgets, you see the different line items, but you're really approving the fund as a whole. So should the board decide that they no longer want to move forward with, anything like that, we definitely don't have to fund it. But I believe we're currently in the process of reviewing those, but we did receive them. Yes.
Okay. And replacing the storage shed for leaf
to take over? Do we have any? suggestions?
We do not have that in the budget currently. So I will, that's definitely, you know, one of the things we have to figure out. Hopefully find outside funding for, because it's not feasible right now for the town to fund that all on their own. So hopefully we're able to find additional funding or figure out an alternative solution short term for that. But right now it's not in the budget.
I think that answers all the questions I have. Good questions. Those are great questions. Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions? Okay, then I will open the public hearing. Would anybody in the room or on the phone care to speak during the public hearing for budget adoption?
Oh. Boy. I did receive some written comments from 3 of the trustees, I believe. I've got one from Trustee Williams, that though I cannot be present to vote, I would like to voice my approval for the adoption of the 2023 Town of Lyons budget. The other one. This is from Trustee Dottie. As I will not be present at the next BOT meeting on November 21st, I would like to have the following comment entered into public record. I, Trustee Dottie, would like to support the draft version of the budget as discussed at our budget retreat on October 22nd. And then I believe Trustee Delman as well stated, since I can't attend the meeting on Monday, Mayor Rogan, I would like to have this read in for the record. In my reading of the upcoming budget and meeting with Finance Director Eystone, I believe they have done an excellent job on the upcoming budget, and I don't see any discrepancies, which would give me pause in passing the proposed 2023 budget. Trustee Delman.
Did you receive any other public comment? That don't need read into the record, but I think you distributed.
Oh,
them.
yes, I received from Mark Browning, and that was sent to the Board of Trustees.
Thank you. Right. Nobody else would like to speak? I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Are we gonna vote on 2298 and 2299? So,
I asked that question earlier, and the answer is, we're gonna vote all at once.
okay, so when I motion, do I motion for 1 or 2? Or do I just read the motions? That's
There's only one public hearing, but 2 resolutions,
2 resolutions.
so we do have to do it.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
I got that wrong.
It's only one
Yeah.
public hearing.
Mr. Simonson has it correct. It's one public hearing. So we open a public hearing, discuss the budget, and we vote individually on each resolution.
Okay. Would you like to make a motion?
Okay, so we'll start with the first one. I move to approve resolution 2022-98, a resolution of Town Alliance, Colorado, summarizing revenues and expenditures for each one in the document budget for the Town of Alliance, Colorado, the calendar year of 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Discussion.
I don't have anything to add other than what we discussed in the budget retreat and first reading. It's pretty much as expected. I appreciate the effort that was put in to adjust on salaries for inflation, et cetera. So I'm good with the budget.
Well, I guess I do want to say, I do think that we are adopting a very conservative budget. More conservative than I think in many ways have done in the past. I really appreciate the hard work, and I do think that we were really efficient in this process. And so for that, I'm very grateful.
Yeah, and I'll echo those sentiments of appreciation for the hard work put into this budget. And I think, this year, every municipality is looking at the same thing and wondering what the next 12 months is going to bring. And I think that budgeting conservatively is absolutely the best way to go. And let's hope we'll have plenty of happy budget amendments in 2020. Okay, I'll call for the vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
I'm having everybody here is really some space. Okay. So do we have another motion?
Yes, I move to approve resolution 2022-99. A resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, appropriating sums of money to various funds in the amount and for the purpose as set forth for the town of Lyons, Colorado for the 2023 budget year.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Trustee Elson. We have a motion and second. Any comments? Okay, call for the vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Yeah, congratulations, everybody. We have a budget. All right, we're moving on to the next public hearing, which is the second reading of ordinance 1134. An ordinance of Lyons, Colorado, approving a lease of town property to Planet Bluegrass for the Rocky Grass 2023 and 2024 festivals. Before we begin, I want to disclose that I have a pending financial arrangement with one of the owners of Planet Bluegrass. This will not affect my decision in the matter, and the vote is necessary to maintain a quorum. Okay. Great. Is there a staff report?
I wasn't sure Brandon was gonna do it, but it looks like I am. You already held a first reading on an ordinance to allow for a 2-year lease arrangement with Planet Bluegrass to be able to utilize and lease the Laverne Johnson Park during the Folks Festival. We again have to take these in two separate motions, or two separate public hearings. So the first one is to lease Laverne Johnson Park to Planet Bluegrass during the Rocky Grass Festival. And they will pay the equivalent of a fully leased park. That means all camping, all parking, all shelters. And on top of that, they cover all cleaning, trash removal, anything necessary to maintain the park during their usage, as well as any damages made to the property that could occur. So after the first reading, the board requested that the staff look at modifying the language for overflow parking at the Second Avenue Trailhead. So the attorney Dittman has made adjustments to that language, and it has been acceptable to Planet Bluegrass as well. So they are willing to pay, the new lease says that there would be a flat rate of $1,200 for the 3 days of parking at Second Avenue Trailhead, as long as they are available for use. They are aware that if we enter an arrangement with the motel, that may not be available, all of it. However, no one is anticipating that's going to be in 23, and probably not 24 in that time of year. So they're agreeing to that if they utilize the facilities.
There's some additional language too about if the spots aren't available, but it's partially available, that the rate will be prorated accordingly. Just to, kind of envision the full range of scenarios.
Thank you. Questions?
Okay, so I really appreciate your adding that language. That was, upon my request, and I think it was good. But my question is, and I know I'm kind of anticipating a worst case scenario that might not happen, but if for some reason we have in 2024 a hotel that takes up the entire parking lot, we have the thing here that says we will not charge them for those spaces. Do we need to have something in here though that says we're going to find you other spots? Should we though? Like in
I
the
don't
past. Right, in the past, we've had them park at the phone park or in the huge field or even in the dog park. So is that no longer happening at all?
So, from my perspective, and I'll let Victoria weigh in, she's more operationally, aware of the possibilities. I don't think we should contractually bind ourselves that yes, we will find you additional spots because they may not be available, right? I think for a legal perspective, we're willing to commit in good faith to help you find those spots. And I think Victoria may have a better idea of where those spots may be available, but to contractually obligate the town to say, yes, we will definitely find you replacement spots, I think puts us at risk somewhat, given kind of, we know that the limited parking available. And if we're contractually obligated to provide parking and we can't do it, because for whatever reason, it's a default of our contract. And so I would not recommend putting that kind of language in the contract, but I think it's more than fair to say we're going to be, good partners and verbally agree to the extent we can to find parking when available.
I can add to that. We have already, in some of our initial discussions with the hotel, have identified which row would be theirs. And so this is taking into account that they would only utilize that row or row and a half for the hotel. And so if we need an overflow, we still have almost 200 spots at Bone Park that we could work with them as well.
Okay. So, yeah, because it does stay in here, although I'm trying to find it in the moment I can't. There would not be anything available. Like there is no
Can't guarantee it. There's no guarantee,
Okay.
which is upon the advice of the
Okay. Okay, so that's fine.
What's really changed from previous years is that they now are able to park hundreds of cars on their own property.
Right.
And they did not have that capacity back when we were using Bone Park in the dog.
Right.
So that's changed dramatically.
I do want to make an amendment though. And it's, let's do that. Oh, shoot, I'm sorry. Yep.
Let me try tuning on the next one to you and see if that.
With someone I'm using it. Okay.
See if that helps with the distance from the range.
Okay, any other questions? No, all right, I will open the public hearing on ordinance 1134. Anybody in the audience care to comment? Mr.
Zach.
Tucker, would you state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Zach Tucker. I live at 1804 Tyler Avenue in Longmont. I just really wanted to say hello on behalf of Planet Bluegrass and say thanks for working out a 2-year agreement here. This really helps us for planning for the future and being able to have that consistency of knowing that we're good to go for 2 years. And I wanted to give a special shout out to Kim for working hard to get this all set up for us and arranged. So I appreciate that and I appreciate everything everybody's doing.
Thank you, nice to see you. Come out in person sometime. Anybody else care to comment tonight? No, I will close the public hearing and I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance 1134.
Can I jump in real quick? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Mayor Rogan, before I proceed, did you have a disclosure to make?
She did.
I made it earlier.
Okay, sorry, I'm working off a cell phone, so if that got out for me, I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that was in the record before we proceeded.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
I move to approve ordinance 1134, approving a lease of town property to Planet Bluegrass for the 2023 and 2024 Rocky Grass Festivals.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any amendments?
It's a clerical amendment mainly. So at the beginning of the whereas agreement, It talks about doing business with Planet Bluegrass here and after PB. But when we go down into the number one, lease of property, scroll down to 3, it says TBF. And I don't know if that matters or not, and if it should say PB. As it references PB throughout the rest of the document.
Attorney Dittman, maybe we could reference both at the beginning, known as PB or Telluride Bluegrass Festival.
Yeah, then
TB.
I would consider that an errata amendment. We can certainly do that without an amendment. And I think Victoria, Administrator Simonson's correction would be sufficient to kind of address that issue. But thank you for catching that.
Okay. For the record, I'm just gonna have to, I'll mention it again in the next one, because it's there too.
Yeah.
So then, should Mayor Pro Tem withdraw her amendment?
If she wants to pursue with it, she can, but I think we can, it's definitely an errata item, so we can do it without, it doesn't substantively change, you know, the contract anyway. So if she would like to withdraw her amendment, we can.
I withdraw. Yeah, any discussion? Okay, we'll talk the vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Everybody. And now we have our public hearing, second reading of ordinance 1135, an ordinance of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving a lease of town property to Planet Bluegrass for the Rocky Mountain Folks 2023 and 2024 festivals. I'll make the same disclosure that I have a pending financial matter with one of the owners of Planet Bluegrass. It won't affect the way I vote tonight, and my vote's needed to maintain a quorum. Okay, is there a staff report on this?
This is pretty much a repeat of the previous staff report, except this would be for the Folks Festival that's held in August in 2023 and 2024 with the same amendments made regarding arrangements.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Okay, I will open the public hearing. Anybody care to comment on ordinance 1135? All right, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance 1135, approving a lease of town property Planet Bluegrass for the 2023 and 2024 Rocky Mountain Folks Festivals.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Mayor Pro Tem.
Only to just say, same as the last one.
Okay, I will call for the vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. Okay, the next public hearing is second reading ordinance 1136, an ordinance of the town of Lyons, Colorado, amending section 16-3-190 of the Lyons Municipal Code to allow for drive-up window as a conditional use in the business zoning district. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Rogan. This is the second reading of the proposed ordinance, and the proposal came about due to a potential use of an existing parcel of land that's zoned B in the town of Lyons. Right now, we have 2 parcels zoned B, and they do not permit the conditional or any use of a drive-up window. So it came to light that probably the best path forward, not just for this proposed business use on one of the B zone parcels, but just generally speaking, would be to allow it as a conditional use. This would allow for the level of scrutiny that staff needs, the PCDC needs, and the Board of Trustees need in order to ensure that any potential use of a drive up under the conditional circumstances that or the level of scrutiny that go into a conditional use review circumstance would be heavy enough to ensure that something that the town doesn't desire would not eventually see the light of day. So just to give a visual of this, if I could share my screen, I can demonstrate the two parcels of land. Let's see. That in the town currently are zoned B. And how that would affect, as of right now, only two parcels. Potentially in the future, of course, there is the possibility under a rezoning circumstance that more than two parcels of land could be zoned B. There we go. So here's the town of Lyons, and as of present, the two parcels zoned B are this one on McConnell Drive, just to the southwest of Highway 36, and kind of trapped between Lyons Valley Park and the river. And then the other B parcel is this one, which I'll zoom in a little bit more. This one is along US 36 and is the one that could potentially see a conditional use permit come before the Board of Trustees in a couple of weeks. One thing to consider is what the B zone allows per the code. Could just read a brief descriptor of that. So that the board and anyone listening this evening can understand what the B zone's intents are. So to be consistent with the intent of the B zoning district is to provide a business use that primarily serves the daily needs of the immediate neighborhood as opposed to community-wide needs. And again, one of the allowed principal uses is a restaurant. And as a conditional use, any proposed restaurant could, in theory, have a drive-up window if it is passed as a ordinance this evening.
Thank you. Any questions for Planner Hammett?
Yeah, just as a matter of conversation, I guess. It came up when I was on the PCDC. A citizen asked, what are the guidelines for like the PCDC or the Board of Trustees when it does a conditional use review? And they're specifically asking, how do they arbitrate? Or is it just totally and completely 100% capricious? Can you just decide whatever you want that night? And I always thought about it. I thought about it philosophically, because I don't disagree with conditional use reviews, but I do think that there should be some form of intent of what you're trying to decide if this is good or bad. And I can't think about this, but I was just wondering, I can't think about a drive-through, a conditional use. You could require a traffic study, you could require these other things, right? But can you give me any thoughts on if you know, as you know, staff to the PCDC, how would you instruct them to like deliberate that night of the conditional use review, what they should consider and how they should bound the argument?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Trustee Henning. So we do have in the Lyons Municipal Code a list of criteria for accepting a conditional use. So any conditional use that's presented first to staff, because staff is the primary level of review, then secondary would be PCDC, and then tertiary Board of Trustees. And under the criteria, it's really spelled out quite a long list of attributes that have to go into any potential application. So there's discretion given to staff, to PCDC, to the Board of Trustees. So you could say that could be capricious, but at the same time, there is quite a few 10 criteria. Thank you, Administrator Simonson. 10 levels of criteria that have to be met for given application to make it through that threshold.
Yeah, and trustee Edding, you can look at section 16730, which has all the different conditional use approval, the 10 that Administrator Simonson just mentioned. And so long as you're following those 10 criteria and you have your decision has a basis within those 10 criteria, it can't be capricious, right? Because capricious means devoid of evidentiary support. And so the evidentiary support, is like the facts in the record based on the lawful criteria contained in 16730. So if anyone's confused as to what are the standards for conditional use approval, you really just need to look at 16730.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I will open the public hearing on ordinance 1136. Anybody here to address the Board of Trustees about this ordinance? I don't see anybody, so I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Awesome. Okay. I move to approve ordinance 1136, an ordinance of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, amending section 16-3-190 of the Lyons Municipal Code to allow for drive-up window as a conditional use in the business zoning district.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion and second. Any addition, any comment? Conversation? No? Okay. We'll call for the vote.
And the motion passes unanimously.
Everybody? Just getting right through these public hearings. Okay, the next public hearing is second reading of ordinance 1137 and ordinance of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, amending section 16-3-150 of the Lyons Municipal Code to allow one standard Town of Lyons lot as recorded on the plat of March 20th, 1929, to be considered as meeting the minimum lot area development standards in the low density residential zoning district R1. Staff report, please, Planner Kimmon.
Thank you, Mayor Rogan. Again, this is the second reading of this proposed ordinance, and this one again stems from a proposal that came across my desk a few weeks back that brought to light what I considered a deficiency in how minimum lot size standards for development purposes are currently allowed within the R1 zoning district. So taking a look at if you go into the Lyons Municipal Code, the minimum lot size presently allowed for a single family detached residence is 7,000 square feet in the R1 zone. Historically, Lyons was platted, so going back to 1882 in the original town plat of Lyons, with lots that were 50 by 140 feet in dimension, which is 7,000 square feet. That was kept in the 1890 replat of Lyons, and then in the amended 1929 plat, it corrected on the ground what were alleys. And to accommodate the alleys into a new plat, 10 feet were taken off of the backside of 10 linear feet. So not square feet, 10 linear feet were removed from the backside of a good portion of the lots within the historic part of Lyons. That brought down the square footage well below 7,000 square feet. However, when Lyons created its municipal zoning code in 1957, 7,000 square feet, and that has continued to this day, by the way. 7,000 square feet was determined to be the acceptable dimension for a single family lot. So we stand presently today in the R1 zone where a given landowner could have two platted lots from 1882 and 1890 and 1929. And have it under a single parcel, but not be able to go through the subdivision process to split their lot, because split their parcel into the original 2 lots, because those two lots no longer have 7,000 square feet. The case example before me is on High Street, the 200 block of High Street, and that owner has 10,800 odd square feet of parcel. It's 2 historic lots and cannot be split into 2 lots as they would like. So I found it likely to be just a historical error that this could correct. So it would remedy more or less, or I shouldn't say remedy, it could affect more or less 10 or so current parcels within Lyons that have multiple lots within those parcels from the original town plats of Lyons. And going forward, those landowners could, should the ordinance be passed tonight, split their lots without having to go into a variance process. The other part of that is it's just from a land use perspective, it's a better ability for the town of Lyons to achieve goals within sustainable development, affordability, walkability, and just making a more cohesive central core of the town of Lyons.
Thank you, Connor. And I have questions.
Yeah. When you split a lot, does the lot that gets created, does that get into inherent water rights from the first lot?
No, yeah, unless there happens to be it was plumbed, and we have record that there is a water tap already existing on that lot, then no. And they would have to go through the water share purchase process.
All right, when you split, is there any way you would enforce that the split should be north to south or east to west? Can they split however they want, or could they split irregularly?
That's a fair point. Currently under the R1 zoning regulations, the frontage needs to be 50 feet. So the minimum width of a lot needs to be 50, which is a traditional lot. In theory, someone could make a parcel that changes shape and is 50 feet on the front, becomes 40 feet, becomes 60 feet, but maintains a semblance of the original lot. But I think the intent is in the language proposed, identifying the original platted lots as they stand from the 1929 plat, which is I've shared on the screen.
There is one other clause in the code that also says that the front of the house must face the primary road.
Okay.
And so there's a couple different things in here that would help us identify the most appropriate split to keep the neighborhood.
Okay, so
consistent.
the front of the house can't do the alley.
It's not supposed to.
All right, okay, gotcha. All right. One other question. If some of these lots are on 12,000, you're going to split them, so they're going to go to about 6,000. So you're under the 7,000 by another 1,000. Are people going to be asking for adjustments to setbacks?
Yeah, that could happen. People could, but that would not be something that would be permissible by passing this ordinance. They would still be subject to the current front, side, and rear setbacks.
All right. Okay. Thanks.
Other questions?
I think I read, but now I'm trying to find it, so it's in my head, that the minimum lot size is 3,500 square feet.
7,000.
But can we go to 3,500 square feet? If somebody with a 7,000 square foot lot wanted to subdivide, can they go down to 3,500 square feet lots?
No, they can go down only to an original town of Lyons platted lot. So it would be if you take a look at, if I'm understanding you correctly, my apologies, Mayor Pro Tem Farrell, if I'm not understanding you correctly. The intent would be if someone owned, for example, 2 lots right here, lots 4 and 5, and they wanted to split this into 2 developable parcels. They would be able to use the original platted lot, which has the intent of being 7,000 square feet. So you couldn't take a single lot, like such as lot 5, and split it into 2. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, not in the R1, as R1 is currently written.
We also, I believe, had talked about at some point, maybe considering changing this particular area of town to be R3. Would that be the correct rezoning in order to promote smaller units and density? So I'm curious, does this interfere with that potential in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in my estimation, it does not. One thing to consider is this is rectifying kind of what I see as a historical error in the code. It does lend itself towards affordability and densification to a degree, not immensely, because there's only 10 or so of these parcels in town currently. Longer term vision, yes. Changing the R1 zone for the historic part of Lyons would be a wise land use decision. We're an outlier example of a jurisdiction that has R1, which is a suburban style zoning in the center of a city. But that could be many moons away. And for the time being, it would assist a bit in densification and affordability, and generally would just be best practice to rectify what I mentioned as what is an error in the code.
Thank you. These are great questions. And I have one as pertains to setbacks. Excuse me, pardon my throat. So what are the criteria for granting setback variances?
So when someone, let's say a development proposal comes before staff and they would like a variance, a setback variance is a use issue and not a hardship with the land. So anyone who wants to develop on a historic lot, let's take, for example, again, lot 5 on block 16, that's on the screen. They would have to abide by the setback for the R1 district. If they don't like that, then that's not the place for them to develop. Variances are when there's some unusual characteristic of the parcel that makes development hard for anyone, not for a particular individual or particular group who wants to, let's say, build a house on lot 5 on the lot line. That's not a hardship on the land. They just don't want to abide by the setbacks.
Thank you. Other questions? No? Okay. I will open the public hearing for ordinance 1137. Anybody care to comment? Could you unshare your screen, please? Thank you. Okay. I don't see anybody wanting to comment, so I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Okay. I move to approve ordinance 1137, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, amending section 16-3-150 of the Lyons Municipal Code to allow one standard Town of Lyons lot as recorded on the plat of March 20th, 1929, to be considered as meeting the minimum lot area development standards in the low density residential zoning district R1.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. All right, we have a motion, second discussion.
Yeah, there's some perspective, and this is why I'm really glad we have first and second reading. Because I thought about this a lot over the time, because we spoke a lot at the first reading. This is great for affordability. And in my head, I wasn't processing that. And so I asked a couple questions. Since they don't give water rights, that means in order to develop a house on one of these lots, they have to buy a CPT share and they also have to get a water tap. That's now $100,000. It's $100,000. If you bake that into their mortgage at 30-year fixed mortgage at 6%, that means when somebody develops a house in Lyons, that person has to pay $600 a month for 30 years just for the right to buy water. That's not even the cost of water. That's just to buy it. And so now if you look at the price of a house, building in Boulder County is what, $300 a square foot? Even if they build a $1,200 square foot or a 1,200 square foot home, you're talking 450,000 plus 100,000 plus all of the other fees for electrical, sewer, building permits, plus the fact that they want to monetize. I would eat my hat if someone built a house and sold it for under 700,000 in Lyons. That's just not even possible. So I'm gonna vote for this because I think it's their land right. But I would really appreciate it if you could really talk to these landowners about ADUs instead. Because ADUs, there's no water rights hassles whatsoever. I mean, that's $100,000 right there off the table. And we did pass a lot with tiny homes and ADUs and everything. So I really think if we want to call this affordable housing, we should really promote ADUs as opposed to this type of development. I was also going to mention the same thing Trustee Farrell said. If we do go to R2, we actually don't want shrinking lot sizes. If they did an ADU for about 3 or 4 years, we move this to R2. Some of these lots you could put a triplex on. So if you did discuss with these landowners possibility of doing an ADU or waiting until it goes R2, that would be much better for affordable housing. I don't think we can say this is affordable housing in any way. Sorry, and one other thing is, I was wondering, I know it's part of an IGA with Longmont that we have to buy a Colorado Big Thompson share. Is it possible that we could go back to Longmont and ask to buy a Macintosh share for infill? Because that would, first of all, take $60,000 off the table, right? I know we can buy Macintosh for business development and low income, but could we include infill in that as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's certainly been some discussion that Director Kaplan and I have had with the Director of Water Utilities, Ken Hewson, with the City of Longmont about different ways to go forward with water purchasing, since we have a water agreement with the town of Lyons, or town of with the City of Longmont.
Yeah.
I'm not certain if this is the appropriate place to discuss it in depth, but there are other options for us that we could potentially utilize.
Okay.
And I concur with pretty much everything you just said.
Okay.
I can also say that the particular case that I brought up on High Street, they have the intent of developing an ADU. And for affordability, they can also develop an ADU on the other parcel. So there can be not just an ADU on the original lot 4 that has a house, but on lot 5 that doesn't have a house. So potentially 3 more housing units.
Yeah, although when you go down to 6,000 square feet, it gets harder and harder to build a detached ADU because then you've got to separate them, right? So that's what I'm worried about is these lot sizes get too small.
Yeah.
And we have to go to R2, right? So California made
R3.
Or R3.
Yeah.
California made single family zoning illegal throughout the whole state. And as goes California, goes the country. So it will eventually happen to us.
Yes.
So if you could talk to the property owners and discuss other options.
That sounds great.
I would like to comment on that as well. I don't think the primary intent of this ordinance was anything with affordable housing. It was really to allow those last 10 homeowners not to have to go through a total board of adjustments for a variance process because they're 1,000 square foot short on their lots. So, and hope that would be nice if the smaller lots could be developed with smaller homes, more affordable. But I think we all agree with you in the current situation, that's not going to be feasible. What we have geared up preliminarily for the December 5th meeting is a workshop for staff to share with you numerous opportunities to promote affordable housing in town. And so hopefully we can have more in-depth discussion about these other options. But the intent of this was really just to clear up the anomaly made with the replanting.
Yeah, and I understand. I mean, infill can be a good policy too, even though it's not affordable. So I just think we should really, because affordable is actually a technical term.
Sure.
80% of AMI and I'm lost after that point.
And ADUs aren't necessarily even affordable.
They're not even affordable.
And ADUs are rental versus ownership. So what I think we want to try to find is what are some other ways to make affordable home ownership. And we're going to spend some time sharing some ideas other communities are doing, see if you have an interest in pursuing those.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
Upcoming.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other comments? I'll call for the vote.
And the motion passes unanimously.
Terrific. Thank you, everybody. So next up is consent agenda. Would you please read the consent agenda into the record?
Yes, item 1 is resolution 2022-100, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving a contract with Roxol for construction management on the US 36 project. Item 2 is resolution 2022-101, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving a contract with Carl Marsh Banks for audit preparation services. Item 3 is resolution 2022-102, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving a contract with the Adams Group for audit services. Item 4 is resolution 2022-103, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, ratifying the construction agreement for the Lyons 2022 Town Hall gutters, soffit and fascia and record room window replacement project with West Pro Roofing, Siding and Gutters. Item 5 is resolution 2022-104, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, ratifying the construction agreement for the 2022 Bone Park multipurpose restrooms, siding and trim repair and painting project with West Pro Roofing, Siding and Gutters. Item 6 is resolution 2022-105, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, ratifying the construction agreement for the 2022 Lyons Post Office heat tape replacement project with West Pro Roofing, Siding and Gutters. Item 7 is resolution 2022-106, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, awarding and approving a professional services agreement with Tierra Resource Consultants, LLC, for renewable energy portfolio options and outcomes. Item 8 is affirming the appointment of members to the Brownfield Advisory Committee. Item 9 are the November accounts payable, and item 10 is the November 7th, 2022 Board of Trustees meeting minutes.
Thank you. That was quite a mouthful. Is there a motion from the consent agenda?
So moved.
There a second?
Second.
Anything anybody would like to call for the consent agenda? Number 1, please. Thank you. And I would like to call number 7, please. Anybody else? Okay. We'll vote on the consent agenda as amended.
And the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, take it away.
On number 1, this is the resolution awarding the professional services agreement for construction management of rock salt consulting group for the Broadway improvement and local trail project. But under the procurement details, it talks about construction for the services of safe routes to school, rather than the intent of this. I believe everything else in this is correct. So I would just like to make sure that under the procurement details and in the fourth whereas that we replace Broadway improvement multimodal trail project with the Broadway improvement multimodal trail project.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Any discussion? Vote.
And the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you for your eagle eye. On that. And so I pulled item 7, which is the professional services agreement with Tier Resource Consultants for renewable energy portfolio options and outcomes. The reason I pulled this is it's a bit of an outlier, as it was the SFC or EDB? SFC. Thank you. SFC who went out for a grant to pay for this. Typically, the way that it should work is Board of Commissioners should come to the board and say, we want to go out for a grant for this work, what do you think? That didn't happen last year. So that is what it is. So, but I have a couple of questions about it, and maybe Director Kaplan can answer. So there was an RFP put out for this work after they found out they were going to receive the grant. Did staff review those?
Yeah, I did them. In addition to Director Mitchell, I also then reviewed it after we discussed that. Chair of the UEB, Mr. Kerr, also reviewed the RFP before it went out.
Okay, so Mr. Kerr reviewed the RFP. Did you review the response as well?
Yes, he helped score the vote.
He helped spread it. Also, okay. I just want to make sure that UEB was involved in this because it directly pertains. So my issue with this proposal is something that was alluded to earlier, which is this is a not to exceed resolution. The proposal itself, if you look on page, sorry, I'm gonna go there in a second. So the page that has the final amount for the proposal, which is, so that's page 19 of their proposal. It says Tiara proposes to conduct the base scope of work for a time and materials agreement not to exceed a total budget of $40,000. So that's a discrepancy to me. I think the best practice would be to ask Tiara to go back, amend their proposal so that the proposal itself says it's not to exceed $25,000 and that there may be an additional scope of work in the future. So that is my proposal. So I guess I would vote no on approving this tonight and ask that the SFC ask Tiara to submit a revised proposal.
But there's 2 phases, right? There's phase 1 and phase 2.
Now
Phase 1 is 25K.
That's all that's funded.
that's all that's funded, but if you look at,
It says phase 2 is funded.
so yeah, so this says not to exceed a total budget of $40,000. This doesn't even talk about the phases.
Oh, okay.
So it's just, I think it's kind of a clerical discrepancy on the part of Tiara that I'm sure they can fix pretty quick. but I think it's best practice to have this agree internally. So. I don't know, Attorney Dittman, do you have any thoughts on the matter?
Yeah, as I mentioned kind of earlier, I think if we were to approve this tonight, I think we have enough evidence in the record, given the discussion here tonight, given the language that is clearly a not to exceed contract, given the fact that we can't appropriate additional monies without approval by the board, that Tierra could not, make an argument, at least a good argument, that we owe them additional money if they were to proceed with on work without authorization. However, I agree with the general concern that it appears, based on the scope of work attachment to the contract, that this authorizes more money than it actually does. If you don't read the two documents together, if we were going to continue this or going to vote it down and tell them to go back and do it again, I think the magic words are that any amount over $25,000 is subject to annual appropriation, or an additional appropriation would be kind of the magic words. Making it very clear that only $25,000 has been appropriated. Anything additional will require additional action by the board.
So then that's what I would propose. Does that make sense for you to take back to the SXC?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So is there any other discussion on this item?
I just have a question. It doesn't look like that causes any significant delay. We're not up against a deadline in terms of timing. No.
Okay, thank you. So I would entertain a motion on item 7.
Do you want to make it though, since it's you want to make a motion? Sure.
Or Director Kaplan?
I was only gonna say that it was Kim who worked with the contractors, not directly the SFC. I don't know if that
Okay.
made any difference.
Yeah, well, then we can let Kim know about this. Okay, so I will move that we do not adopt resolution 2022-106 at this time. Okay.
Second.
Call for the vote.
And that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. I know the double negatives. Thank you, everybody. So boards and commissions, before we get the UEB update on solar project finance options, I would like to appoint with great pleasure Sherry Moreau to the Housing and Human Services Commission. Congratulations if you're listening out there, and thank you very much. Okay, so I think we have a UEB presentation, do we not? You do? Excellent. Thank you for sticking around.
Oh, I thought it would be at least.
That's why we
Very happy.
Aaron, come back and do this. We're used to it.
Yeah, I want to get the computer.
Musical chair. Who do we have left on? We don't.
You've got Mr. Keen up there.
We got Ed Keen, Cassie. So we have everyone that matters except Brandon too. Except for Jim Kerr. Jim is home sick.
Oh, no.
His fever broke this morning, so he's heading in the right direction. I texted him just a couple of minutes ago. He said he was feeling up to it. He would join. So we can keep an eye out to see if he does. I'm gonna try and make this brief, especially because I thought it would be late. And since we don't have an ordinance for you guys to make a decision on right now, but I think it's I'm glad we had the opportunity to do this. And I need to start by, start by giving you fair warning. I often struggle with speaking in a formal setting, just ain't wired for it. That's why I'm reading this. I apologize in advance if I totally seize up at some point and manage to embarrass everyone in the room. I'll do my best to keep it together. First, I need to apologize that we were unable to make this easier for you in the October 31st meeting. We do understand why the board voted not approve the solar contract then. It was too rushed. The UEB and staff simply hadn't had time to put together and present better plans. I will be brief. Your packet documents summarize the product status as it stands now. We would like to hear any questions or concerns you have. If we can't address them quickly right now, we will do so before the next board meeting packet goes out. If you come up with questions later, please direct them to us so we can include them as well. Bear in mind that some questions we simply can't know the answers to yet. I should touch on some issues of concern from the previous meeting. Number one, the $173,000 supply chain related increase to the town's cost only equates to an 8% increase in the overall project cost. Just to put it in perspective. Item number two, the town's contract would be used. The non-mistake price includes that. Number three, the ITC refund bridge loan only adds about 1 year to the break-even point of the project. And it leaves the $350,000 electric fund reserve untouched, also untouched an additional $150,000 available fund balance. Number four, lastly, the DOLA grant timing still looks good. Further examination revealed only 72% of the project cost need be invoiced by June 30th. Secondly, the town will have a 2-week grace period after June 30th to submit the invoices to DOLA. And lastly, if Nline finishes their piece before June 30th, which is a real possibility, if not likelihood, Namaste need only submit 68% of their total, which is about 2/3. This project has faced, well, I'm going to stop there and give you an opportunity if you want to hit me with any questions right now, either to try and address immediately or to just add to my list of things we need to get clarified for you before the next meeting, the next time it might come to an approval.
Any questions?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a question or it's a statement, just, if I'm correct or not. I mean, the key paragraph in all of this dealt is the paragraph, the float, 614,000 would come from a loan or a line of credit. I mean, that was our big issue, is we couldn't go under the fund balance. And the question would be, how could we remediate that somehow? And what you're saying here is we roughly could do a loan that could keep our fund balance healthy. And it would then add what you state here is cost that would extend 1 year the payback time in this right here.
Right.
So that's, yeah, roughly, that's the key takeaway from all of this. Is it possible to get this loan? Is it a problem? I mean,
No, I actually, on one of the next pages of that packet, we were actually able to get a meeting with the CCEF, Colorado Clean Energy Fund. They were very receptive. They said this is one of the very scenarios that we are here to serve, is to give a bridge loan.
Yeah.
And this particular product, bridge loan package, they can go up to $2.5 million. staff actually met, discussed it, and I don't know which one of you actually submitted our project to them. And did so in a timely enough fashion that they were able to meet with their board and generate a letter saying everything looks good. For your submittal, and we'll let you know what we're gonna need. And Cassie or Aaron would have actually filed that form.
It's.
Yeah. Did that,
Yeah,
Answer the question.
not to use a.
oh, I'm sorry, the one other thing I was gonna add is I believe they submitted 650,000, which gives us at least 9 months worth of the cost of the loan included in the loan. And even if we went another 6 months, which hopefully we won't, that would add 16,000, excuse me, add a $16,000 cost to the project. Which equates to a few months on the break.
And the break, a few months. Okay.
Yeah, the break-even period right now is about $40,000 of change in the cost of the project to the town. Equates to about 1 year on break-even period.
Okay, thanks.
What else can I address?
This might be a question for Victoria or Cassie, if she's still around. So the 2023 funds needed from town says, I'm looking at the financial summary. I skipped ahead, I hope you don't mind. Total to be paid by town before ITC refund is $1,050,000 and change. And the 2023 town contribution is $437,515. So to me, that says, okay, we're gonna pay in advance and assume that we're gonna get reimbursed. Where is that money coming from?
I can answer that. So the money is coming from, well, it would be partially from the loan, potentially, which, would be part of that float. The 2023 contribution would be the 2022 budget rollover, which we have not spent, and an additional 173,000, which was not included in the 2023 budget that we had just adopted. So we would have to amend that amount. So basically what that is saying is that, yes, it's going to be paid, that piece is going to be paid by the town before the ITC refund, but that would be offset by the loan proceeds. So the loan proceeds would come into the town and assist in the payment on that. And then eventually the treasury would reimburse us.
Okay, so the 173 that we would need to budget in 2023, where does that come from?
That comes from the remaining fund balance in the electric fund. And we have a remaining fund balance right now of about 317,000 after the 3-month reserve is met. So we're meeting the 3-month reserve, and then we have an additional 317,000. So we have enough to fund that additional 173,000 should the board wish to do that.
And what are the staff impressions of this proposal?
Mine or Aaron's?
Go ahead. And for the finance perspective, it's probably Director Eystone.
Okay, we'll go finance first and then.
From a finance perspective, should this be a priority and a desire of the board, it's definitely a feasible option. The one thing that, does cause me a little hesitation is just not knowing how long the treasury is going to take to reimburse us. And I would hope that should it be longer than the 15-month term, we could possibly rework a longer term potentially. But it is a risk, that we would take, of course. We don't know the provisions of, there's still that unknown. But from a financial standpoint, it would cost the electric fund, the interest on the loan and then the origination fee. And it is a fairly low interest rate given, the current rate structures as they are in the economy right now. So it is, if it is a priority of the board, it's definitely a feasible option to do.
Thank you. Director Kaplan?
All right, the utility side, we had the proposals come in that we had and selected this proposal. We did think it was a good proposal. It's always hard to not know what you don't know. There are other proposal options out there that could come in, but we had this one with what was there. DOLA has said that even if it went beyond the June deadline, that they are looking to see what options they have. While our DOLA representative doesn't have any other grants with this funding, he said others out there do, and they have concerns about the fact that the timing got changed. They were really waiting, one, for the election, and then two, still waiting to hear a little bit more about the state budgeting. So they could find out if the state would just allow an extension or just re-grant whatever wasn't spent for the next budget year. If not, they were looking into other options, but again, can't make any firm commitments until time comes and they have more from the budget.
And do we know when the state budget's gonna be adopted or what? Yeah.
Do they adopt one budget? And
October 1st.
so maybe it's, they wanted to hear what the general consensus was when they start talking to their people who represent, who they work with in the representatives in the Senate, because they were talking about early next year.
Okay. Okay, so are there other, did you have anything further? I feel like I interrupted you and.
That's fine. I intentionally didn't want to go through verbatim what I gave you in writing. So I only have a few more paragraphs that I'll summarize with. But as far as Cassie goes, and this is a question for you, Cassie, at least initially. Excuse me. Would it be smart? Excuse me. Would it be smart for the town, when you actually submit the application to Colorado Clean Energy Fund, to ask for a term that's longer, just to give you more of a comfort level? I'm not sure there's any downside to doing that, because we can pay it off as quickly as we want. It's totally flexible. The only downside I can think of, nothing better, is if they would have a problem with that, but I didn't get the impression that that was.
Yeah, I don't think that it's a problem to ask. And even just to ask what the likelihood of an extension is, given, if we have delays in the reimbursement credit. So it's definitely something that I would pursue and ask and inquire about during the process. The other thing is, I know that it mentioned, I think in your paperwork, a June date to take out the loan. My proposal would be to potentially push that as long as we could to stretch our 15-month timeline. Really, we just have to take it out before the end of the year in 2023. So that would be my recommendation. And I think Brandon might have some additional comments on that.
Yeah, there's an additional consideration concerning about pushing that when to take it out as long as possible. And that is something that's not in the packet, but I think we've discussed previously in some detail. that there are Tabor implications for taking out this loan. Pursuant to Tabor, we are restricted from taking out more than 10% of our revenues, or accepting more than 10% of our revenues in grants or loans. And if you do that, you lose your enterprise status. There's no prohibition from doing it. You just lose your enterprise status for a year. And that's fairly common with small utilities. They go in and out of enterprise status quite frequently, but there are disadvantages with losing your enterprise status, namely that you can't take on additional debt. So we couldn't float a bond measure. We couldn't take out additional loans. And so I think it would be to the town's benefit to push that as long as possible, so that we have a better kind of understanding of what our future debt needs are. And so if we did need to take out additional debt, we could kind of coordinate that given the timing. Timing happens after you accept all that money. And so there may be a way to kind of time all this out so it has less impact. And so there is a benefit definitely for waiting, getting additional information, planning to the extent we can, if we know we have additional needs for financing.
Brandon, would you clarify, I'm not sure if I just missed it there, but would you clarify, if my understanding is correct, that the enterprise status would be restored by 2024, 2025, so it would only be out of enterprise status during 2020.
Yeah, so it again, it depends on when you take out that loan and when you get that money, but it's a 1-year clock essentially. And again, it's highly dependent on when you receive this money. It usually kicks in, January 1st of the year following is, I think, typically the way it's been done when I've done these in the past. But again, highly dependent upon when you receive this money, when you accept this loan. And so we'd have to do additional kind of understanding of that when we approach closer. But I mean, at the soonest, it would be 2025 before enterprise status would be restored. And so we'd have, be restricted from taking out additional loans, receiving additional grants, anything really in 2024, until the enterprise status was restored.
To give one more clarification, that happens not when we take out the loan, but because we received the grant of $1 million. So I would clarify that will happen no matter what if we accept this.
Right. And yet another reason for the timing to sync up. That's a good point. Yeah.
Once we lose that status, we can no longer go for a loan without falling under Tabor concerns. So we would have to wait for a year. In 2024. We could not go out for a loan with enterprise electric fund. We'd have to wait till it would be established as an enterprise.
So,
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but can I follow up on that for 1 minute? So in the reason why losing the enterprise status prohibits you from taking out a bond or receiving a loan, the reason why that's prohibitive for under this hypothetical for 2024 is because the enterprise's revenues are what guarantees the return on that bond or repaying that loan. And so if you're not an enterprise, you can't guarantee those revenues. And that's why you're not allowed to take out additional ones. It is to kind of put a further point on that.
so hypothetically, if there was some kind of terrible emergency that required us to take out a loan to restore our electric service, if we lost power in a wildfire and we didn't have enterprise status, then we couldn't take out a loan.
So there are ways, the smarter people that work in the bond industry that can get around some of these restrictions. I mean, it would probably involve accepting a grant with no obligation of repayment based on revenues, until, the enterprise status was restored. But it would be definitely a lot trickier to underwrite that and be very contingent. I'm not saying it'd be impossible. There are, I've seen, bond financing and, loans be doing extremely creative ways to get around some of these restrictions, but it would limit our world of opportunities. It'd be the easiest way to put it.
I was just gonna say, that's, I think, part of the reason, part of the rationale why staff in particular felt like it was a good idea to take out enough loan that we're leaving roughly $500,000 of the electric fund intact. So that was the rationale, if I understood that. Any other questions or issues that should be addressed before I just wrap up? I thought you'd give me some more work to do.
Well, I'm just gonna say, I have some reservation. I'm having some real reservations. For one, we are missing 3 trustees. And I'm also looking at what we just have right now as a 5-year capital plan. What we budgeted for 2023, and then what we have bumped off to 24 to 26 is, $2.9 million under general fund, 300,000 under the electric fund. It's huge, and I am feeling that we need to have a full BOT discussion about this in a little bit more detail. I'm not feeling comfortable right now
We're not making discussion tonight.
It's whether or not you want to move forward for your next meeting to present a resolution.
Yeah, they'll be,
right, because I'm not feeling it. I'm not ready yet, so that's why this is good to hear. I need clarification to hear what your questions and concerns.
Yeah,
Fitting it in.
so a historical perspective, I think would help this board out a lot, because we weren't the board that approved this from the very beginning. And I'm trying not to conflate different issues, like, do we want this or not, or is the financing good? Maybe the financing is fine, but I'm kind of wondering, are we retreading on what the previous board thought about? So I'd like a much more historical perspective on all of this before I move forward, because I'm really nervous about this too.
Yeah.
and I think that probably would be best if we from staff. If my recollection serves, the previous board wasn't unanimous about this project. But it did get approved. So, I don't know, I think I agree with Mayor Person that I would like to have additional discussion with the full board before we decide whether we want to bring forward any sort of resolution. So maybe the next agenda can include just a discussion item. And then in the meantime, between now and then, first of all, thank you very much.
Yeah.
For this incredible work and for your patience as this board gets up to speed on the project and the financing and all of the moving parts. So I think between now and the next meeting, when we do have this discussion, we may have more questions that come out of this discussion tonight that hopefully we can email over to you all and hopefully get some answers over the next couple of weeks if that works for you.
Is there a deadline at this point? So can you reiterate what that is?
So again, officially, we still have the June 30th deadline for the grant. Right now, NOAA has said they would try to work with us. We have not signed a renegotiated contract, right? We were waiting for clarification on whether we would move forward with accepting a new contract. For better or worse, the existing contract still gives a date of February of 2024. At this point, we have not disregarded that one to take on a new one. Yeah, I don't know what that means legally with the state budget saying it's the 23rd. And then clarifying question sort of on that was, do you want more information on the grant and the status that does to the enterprise fund? I don't think that was ever realized or talked about with previous boards. But again, that would be regardless of any proposal. Are you concerned about taking on a grant and therefore we don't want to go forward with anything potentially that would lose that status? Right, that taking on $1 million grant, no matter super great funding or a super great project, that was even a lot less than this. You would still have that concern of losing that status. No wonder how much follow up on that.
Yeah, I would like more information on that. I don't remember ever hearing that in our discussions with previous boards. And I think that's super important. And I think that's very important for the entire board. So I appreciate that suggestion. Good.
So to address the timing issue. For what it's worth, from what we know and what we think we know at this point, plenty of unanswered questions. If we end up having to push out board approval on this, honestly, probably be on the next meeting, I would not be confident that the project would succeed moving forward, given the constraints we currently have, particularly with the bill with deadline. Just to address that issue briefly, not to put undue pressure, but and unfortunately we're stuck in this squeeze. I tried to explain briefly as briefly as I could how we got into this squeeze. The whole reason why we pushed to get the special meeting on October 31st was because the DOLA thing just kind of blindsided us fairly recently. And so that's just the reality. But so far at this point, namaste. I mean, really what this boils down to in terms of what really can and can't happen are the boots on the ground, and that's namaste. And they know what they can do and what they can't do pretty well. They won't know more exactly. I mean, right now, the schedule that we were working, the only schedule we have from them is the one that we had on at the October 31st meeting. That's admittedly a padded schedule. They're unlike the other contractors who give you a proposal schedule that looks like what you want to hear. That's what the other proposers did. Namaste said, can't do that. We're going to tell you what we can do and what we're confident we can do. But they do pad it a bit so that when it push comes to shove and they actually go to get it done, they can be confident they can stay with it. So the bottom line is when I spoke with them and told them that it was going to be at least December 5th before we got board approval of the contract, they said, well, we think we can still make that work. But it didn't sound like they would be game to even, they're not going to make up a story to make it work. And it just sounded to me like if it goes beyond December 5th, they didn't think it looked this promising. So that's what we're stuck with.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's a tough spot, I think, for everybody to be in. Appreciate that. I'm glad you didn't have to do that at 11 o'clock.
Should I do a quick wrap up?
Do you have additional information to share that's not in the packet?
I have just a couple more statements.
Sure.
And I am disappointed that we don't have more board members. My intent was to try and provide as much boiled down information as I could here, in your packet. I can also provide what I'm reading from to all of the board members happily tomorrow.
Great.
And so, and then also I will work on these items that you mentioned as concerns as best I can. And distribute that out to you so that perhaps there may be a possibility by the time you decide whether or not it makes the agenda, you may be able to make a decision on that. Just in summary, this project has faced many challenges over the last 2.5 years. It has been a worthy endeavor, the result of which all of Lyons would be able to take pride in for many, many years to come. In addition to providing the largest reduction in carbon emissions that we are currently able to implement, it would actually save ratepayers money. Further, it would bring the benefits of locally generated renewable energy to residents for whom it is not currently available. Take a moment to imagine it, just silently sitting out there year after year for decades to come, cranking out pure, clean energy. We have already cleared so many hurdles, and there will be more to come. But this project has a lot of momentum. It has so much going for it. The $1 million DOLA grant, 2/3 of $1 million ITC cash refund, Colorado Clean Energy Fund to finance that refund, our energy supplier behind it, MEAN, and strong support from the Lyons voters. We have 3 highly motivated, competent, reliable contractors, Namaste, Watmore, and Enline, that are at the top of their game. Even the governor himself is pulling for this project. If we can move forward now, meaning soon enough, we are in a position to make this project successful, both in the short and the long terms. And unless we hit a clear, hard stop, we owe it to the voters in this town, our youngsters, and the planet to make our all reasonable efforts to make it a reality. Thank you for your consideration and everything you do for this community. As I see it, your service is often difficult and thankless, sometimes thankless, but is one of the many important reasons why this community is so extraordinary.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. You did a great job too.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
Come.
Thanks.
Right, so we have no general business items tonight. So we will move on to trustee reports. You want to take a break? Yeah, I was gonna maybe do it before the executive session, but. Let's take a 5-minute break.
I've got a long trustee report.
Thank you for the morning. Was all gonna be really drinking.
Let's get started.
Okay, yeah, we're starting. Good night.
You. All right, so let's start now. So for the SFC, we had two students there observing. One was Aaron's daughter, Zamia. Maya, sorry, but she was there representing student advisory. And then there was another gentleman there named Maxwell. I can't pronounce his last name, but it begins with a B. He was from the Lions High School. He was recommended by his science teacher. I think Edwards said all that. Reach it up. It's great talking with them. They want to help out any way that they can. There's different things to do. They want to come to the next meeting. So it was a really good conversation. So it's really good to see they're both want to be active and want tasks given to them. But no, it was really good. And like Max was concerned about the climate crisis. He said sometimes things seem hopeless. And he said more students at the school feel that way, which I was shocked that they would actually express that. So that's good. It's the EAB met. It's also the SFC met too. We talked about how they met with the quality meeting here and about the term limits for people and how that group, a lot of them have been there a long time, so there may not be many people left. So looking for different things to do. So it'll be a good time. It'll be a good opportunity for people. We talked about we talked about the Corona Hill spraying, how the meeting went with the fire department. He said it didn't go as ideally as they would like. That's what we've been talking at the fire station. There was some comments. It didn't seem as nice as it could have been. Talk about weed management. Talked about the avenue. They're coming to us. Steve's coming to us on our December 5th meeting for a presentation. He's also going to bring a proclamation that they approved there about working with task force with the county and town. They'd like us to a resolution.
That only the board can approve it.
No, correct. Yes, it's just something they'd like us to discuss, and potentially us to. They talked about outreach with some of the trees that are dying, but I actually didn't notice until I was on this committee that we have a tree map walking tour. So a couple of trees are dying and getting replaced, and some of the signs we want us getting some new signs with trees. Check. I did not know we have that. They talked about the limb drop off and how it was very successful, and the chips are going to be in the family with us and people in the town if they want them. Talk about the Brownfield Advisory Commission, and looking forward to being on that, helping out on that in any way we can. That's fine.
Thank you. I don't have, sorry, a whole lot. We did not meet. Jim Kerr, I think, is in Nebraska. We have a council meeting, but everything we know about the electrical thing we just did the solar farm. The student advisory committee, we met here last night. They do need some agenda items. So because if they don't, they just jiggle for an hour and they don't have them. So they're at least having fun. But Ms. Kaplan is meeting with Lee and that lady that we have here tonight. So they're meeting sometime this week to talk about this health for students in town, mental health for students in town. I guess since I'm the unofficial liaison to the bus is going to be in the parade. So if you have a chance, meet the bus driver.
Well, I think the entire board can get on the bus.
We could get on that bus. I mean, we have the only bus driver that bakes you cake for your birthday.
Oh.
So
on
the bus, and then she did win an award for a disability. So for handling people with disabilities. So anyway, that's fantastic. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you for being the unofficial boss lady.
I like that.
I do too. We'll connect, so.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so it's actually not that bad. Let's see, okay, so the PCDC comprehensive plan. I just wanted to give you all an update on what the schedule is. The Board of Trustees are going to be, PCDC on Monday, this coming Monday, are going to be taking kind of what should be their last hurrah of input and edits. Then Clarion will make those changes. And then they're going to come to this Board of Trustees on the 5th of December. So please have us on the agenda. And so yeah, the idea is that Clarion would like to present to the Board of Trustees. This is the Board of Trustees' chance to give input. And any additional feedback that needs to go to the PCDC. And then the PCDC will adopt it the following meeting in December. So let me just see if I can give you some actual dates.
So we'll have a lot of reading then.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
It's-
how many pages?
it's long. No, it's.
Well, the section without exhibits.
So the way it's organized is you have chapters 1 through 3. Chapters 1 through 3. One talks a little bit about how the layout and the process that we went through to come up with the comprehensive plan. So it's a pretty easy read. Chapters 2 and 3 really go into detailed information about what our goals are and then the policies that go underneath those goals. And that there are 5 general goals that we established. And then chapter 4, it's organized as an implementation document. So the chapter 4 is really, ultimately, it's staff, it's the Board of Trustees and PCDC and other commissions. And it's outlined basically on the goals and the policies, and chapter 4 talks about these are implementation ideas. And then we organized it where pretty much staff is the lead, but then all of the different commissions that might be involved that work together on a particular subject. So anyhow, we'll get into it in a little bit more detail, but it's a lot and it needs some time and input because this is your chance. It's kind of a one and only chance unless you come back and say, oh my God, no, I want more than one time.
And so is there a reason that it needs to be on the 5th of December versus the second meeting in December?
Clarion. And that way, then the PCDC can adopt it at their next meeting, which is the 12th.
And
Otherwise, it gets into Christmas.
okay. And when you say Clarion, it's because Clarion, their contract is ending.
They're done. And Clarion told us that we are $25,000 over budget, but I don't think that means that they're not coming to us and asking for $25,000. It's just, it's
They're
all
taking
within
a
the,
loss.
they're taking a loss of $25,000 because it's this, but it stays within the scope of what was agreed upon. So, they're really wanting to be done. And so,
Well, let's talk. Yeah, let's maybe a special meeting. Let's talk about it. The last thing I want to do is rush this because Clarion wants to be done. You know,
so we do have some ideas. We could get feedback from the Board of Trustees. And then we could make some adjustments, but really what I want is the approval from the Board of Trustees from chapters 1 through 2, or excuse me, 3. Chapter 4, I don't love the idea of separating it out, but the PCDC could massage that later in January. It's not ideal. It's best to do it as one big package, but there is that option. So, yeah, but the 5th is, sorry, I thought the planners had given them to you.
We went back and forth. I thought we were then back not gonna do it then, because I thought it after the last.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
We'll figure it out.
okay. So there's that. I know the PCDC would like to reinstitute their quarterly sprint meeting with you. So perhaps starting in January, that can take place. And at some point, it'd be kind of cool to hear how the meetings are going with the commissions. You did, yay, okay, so that would be kind of a nice thing to hear. And I do want to give a massive shout out to the high school cheerleaders. They just won regional competition. Now, this is something that they go every year to Strasburg High School and compete. Strasburg always wins because it's bias their school. But this year, Lions won it and they did an incredible job. They were practicing at 6 o'clock in the morning before school. I mean, they worked really hard and you could tell they looked so good. So I just want to give them a shout out. They were so excited.
It was the first time in 10 years.
Is it I was wondering about that. So yeah, it's really good. And we heard several residents send in some emails about the redesign of Railroad Avenue. So I was just wondering, maybe at some point in the near future, we could get an updated status on that. I don't feel like we ever adopted anything specifically. We made some suggestions. It is.
Yeah, and I responded.
I forgot.
to those folks.
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew we talked about it.
Yeah.
So, okay, so there's that. And something I think was discussed earlier about the IGA with Longmont in terms of our water. And that's perhaps something that we could look at and find another way of saving money if that can get renegotiated. So I wanted to bring that up. And then the rest of my next things are going to wait after for staff report and financial report. I'm done.
Thank you. Sorry, I've got, I guess, a medium length report. So this morning, I'll start with this morning. I was in a call with Joe Negussi as a quarterly mayor's call, which is always fun. It's a half hour of mayors peppering him with questions and being kind and lovely like he always is. So one of the things he said that really stuck in my mind that I wrote down is things seem impossible until they're not. I thought that's a really good way to look at local governments. Things can seem impossible until they're not. Our congressionally directed spending, that $300,000 for the wastewater treatment center, it's still, that process is still going on. So it's one of the things that they want to get completed during this lame duck session before the new Congress is sworn in. So that's good news. The LEHC met and they're thrilled about the budget in town this year. There's this, I think, is really cool. Someone who is a children's theater specialist came and wants to start a children's theater program in town. And she has these great ideas. She's been working with a bunch of kids and she's just looking for some support from the LEHC that she's definitely getting. So that's fun. I think it's for little kids, not high school kids, but who knows. So a couple little things. Every year we get an end of year report from the boards and commissions, correct? So do we send out reminders to them to let the chairs know? Greg will always do it because he's doing the town report, annual reporting. That's his part. Oh, okay. One other thing too, that you all may not know or remember is that Administrator Simonson gets a year-end review from the Board of Trustees. And so I want to make sure that we don't overlook that. So I don't know the process to go about getting that going. I'm looking at the look at something we both, I bet you know. So if we can get that going, that would be great. And then finally, the big issue, which has kind of been threading through this whole meeting, is affordable housing. So as we know, 317 Evans went on the market, it's under contract. The folks who have it under contract want to create permanently affordable housing that's safe, that's up to code, that's actually pleasant to live in and look at. No, this is, no, that's a different issue. Yeah, this is 317 Evans. So this is across from the Burns House. It's the white building across from the Evans. It used to be a nursing home. Correct? And somebody bought it, turned it into apartments. There are 10 units on something that's been zoned only for 6 units. Not safe. And so we're running up into some really big timing constraints where the purchasers of this property have to have their zoning and their permits in place by a specific date, which is coming up real quick, in order to purchase the modular homes, the modular housing that they would like to put on there. And they have a plan for review. It's actually really cool. So considering that, and there's way too much to go into about it right now because it's a very complex issue. But I would like to do everything we can to make sure that these folks do not get displaced. Because if this deal doesn't go through, my fear is that some really wealthy person's going to buy those properties and put up 2 McMansions, and we're going to be displacing 15, 20 people. So I'd like to call a special meeting to discuss this. And I know the holidays are upon us, and that really stinks, and I apologize for that in advance. But if we can put something together early next week, that would be great. And maybe Clerk Vasquez can send out a poll to try to find some times. We can get a majority of the trustees, even just a quorum. I really feel like I don't want to give up on this yet. And I know this is one of our highest priorities. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, that is all I had. Staff reports.
Thank you. We'll keep this short and we'll have a executive session here. In the administrator's report, we did post the final, or not the still unofficial election results. From our latest election, where you all are aware that the lodging tax did pass at 77% for and 22% against at this point, as well as the second question regarding arts and cultural facilities and parks and open space zone by conditional use also passed 73% to 27%. So I'll make sure that is just gets on the record. Probably the big news of the last 2 weeks is congratulations to Erin and Ramey Environmental. We had our inspection by Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, and it's a water and wastewater system inspection that only happens pretty rare, 3 to 5 years, I'd actually say. And they conducted their inspection and there were 0 violations in our system. Yay. Which is almost unheard of. I was telling Erin that my first month here, after my first week on the job, they showed up for this water and wastewater inspection, and we had 22 serious violations in the town of Lawrence on our water supply. So this is significant progress that has occurred over the years, and so deserves a major accommodation.
I offer you a pumpkin.
And then we've also we've been waiting on that new wastewater permit. We went to a general permit and we finally have hearing from the state on that as well, but that's a much more complicated process when we have our next water workshop. You'll see my report too, that the board had asked us to look into the Boulder County cohort for building codes. And it sounds like it might be in our best interest for now anyway, to kind of observe and ride on their coattails and not become a formal member yet, because when we do, then you pay your portion of fees and other things. So they said they're okay with us being an observer for a bit. And so for now, we're going to recommend that we watch what the others are doing, continue to gauge that progress, and at least for now. Let's see what else, big news here. Oh, this is kind of interesting. With the State Highway 7 construction project being completed, we've been notified that they are going to be updating all of the flood maps on the South St. Vrain, which will have an impact on us. No one knows exactly what that looks like yet, but kind of interesting because if they said it could have an impact on the floodplain throughout the confluence area for us, hoping that it would be minimal, but you don't know that until they do about a year's worth of engineering studies. But I think we might reach out to them. We've been trying to find financing for us to do a letter of map revision. This will take care of the South St. Vrain for us. But the state's actually getting a grant from someone to do this. We're going to try to find out who that is and see if we can have them do the whole St. Vrain. Right. And then we would not have to do the lower. So trying to get creative there. In regard to, I think people, you may have noticed there was a huge USA track and field event this weekend, and my understanding is there was over 900 runners. It really got complex when this winter storm hit so hard and fast the night before. Literally people out on fields shoveling snow off fields so they could run. And quite impactful, much more impactful to the parks than we planned because it was so bad. So, but overall, it sounds like it was well attended and had Mother Nature been its average November day would have been awesome. So we are waiting to debrief on that one. Mark your calendars, December 3rd is just next weekend. That will be the artisan market and the parade of lights. We encourage everyone. Right now, I think we have about mid-20s in entries. We usually try to get up to around 35 in parade entry. So glad to hear the Lions flyer is going. And
question, if we all get on the Lions flyer, you have to publicize that.
well, we would ask Mr. Brandon that, but he would probably say that's a social event. But it certainly wouldn't just hurt to say there's a public gathering
right
of
up.
you. And then you're covered since you might be on there alone talking business or something. Yeah, just what you want to be doing there. Old Man Winter has reapplied. It's been a really successful event here. This year's a little different. They want to host it at Bone Park instead of over in Johnson. So it would change it significantly, but they feel they have much more parking, more sunshine to keep warmer. And so we're going to be working on that with them. That would be February 5th. And then last but not least, of course, the Main Street program came for their regular visit as well. Had a great turnout and meeting with the EDC and very excited for us. And they think they can provide some significant assistance in the historic preservation world too. So we'll continue to work with them. And then Cassie did include her financial update. I know the big thing is always, what is sales tax doing? Sales tax actually hit its highest ever this month, but it's somewhat of an anomaly because there were taxes, penalties and interest that were booked this month.
Oh.
So when you take those out of this month's revenue, it's actually very, very similar to what it has been, 7.5% higher than last year at this time. And if you recall, we had budgeted for 5.5. So it's remaining strong, but there was a one-time payment of some penalties and taxes due to the town. And we stayed right on schedule with 64% of that being locally generated taxes. And then revenues and expenditures, she has an explanation page on each, but it sounds like Mayor Pro Tem might have some questions.
I did. I just, since you're on the finance, I'll go ahead and ask that question first. Oh, good. Hi. So I was curious, and I only thought of it because of what you have here, but maybe I'm requesting that perhaps when you get everything reconciled by, I think, what is it, March, the 22 numbers, I would be really curious to see if we adjusted for inflation, what the sales tax actually looks like. I kind of wonder if there's a chance that it might actually be similar to last year's if inflation is 8%. You know, so I just kind of was wondering if, not right now because you're super busy, I'm just thinking that when you do the reconciliation, if we could take into account this year's inflation rate and see if it changes what our taxes really look like. So that was just a thought I had. And then in terms of the staff report, I would love to see what Link Generator was presenting to the staff. Maybe we could get something in January. And then on the parade of lights, the parade, did you get anything from the high school besides the folks?
I don't know that. I haven't seen the applications, but I can sure find out later.
Okay, because I'm really trying to get some other high school folks to do floats.
Okay.
And so
I can find out tomorrow. Elisa will have that list. Kim's out of.
oh, okay.
You will want to know that Julie did text, so I'm sure you'll see the cheerleaders in there somewhere.
Good. Well, that was going to be my hope. So okay, super. And that was all I had, except did you want some direction on the water treatment plant, or did we not get that yet?
I just left it there in light of time and only 4 of you.
Okay.
But we do want some guidance on whether or not the board wants to spend $6,000 on a survey on that parcel on the east.
And I think the reason that we wanted a survey to begin with was to determine whether it actually does include riverfront property, because that would affect the price.
Yes. It's just not budgeted, and so of course, that's, you know, just the number higher than just, you know, $1,000 or something. So it's whether or not you wanted to spend that at this time or not.
My question was going to be, you know, we sold the tower. Can we take some of the money from that, or take $6,000 from it?
You can just approve it. It's just, we didn't have it reflected in our budget this late in the year, and it came in much higher than we anticipated it to, so we'll make sure you still want to do that.
I think it'll help us price the property and it'll save time. I mean, if somebody goes under contract on that property and then says, oh, I thought it was riverfront, I'm not gonna, I think we just do it.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm done. Okay. All right. Attorney Dittman, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor Rogan. I do have a few updates I wanted to give tonight. First, we're going to have a Honeywell update at the next meeting for executive session. So I'm not going to spend any time discussing that, but a couple of our other matters, we do have updates and pretty significant ones. First, in the Yoder case, it's been a while since we've had an update on that one. We did get an order from municipal judge on the 10th of November. So a couple weeks ago now, or a week ago now. And I'm happy to report that the town did prevail in that case. And so the judge's order and relevant part says that Ms. Yoder has 30 days from November 10th to get permits from the town for all the work she needs to do to abate that property. Once the town issues those permits, if they are issuable, She has 60 days to correct, the building into a non-nuisance form pursuant to those permits. To my knowledge, she has not applied for those permits, so time is definitely ticking. But that is, I think, is a great result for the town, kind of given the lengthy saga we've had on this one. The obvious question is what happens if she doesn't pull the permits, and really that comes down to two different options. One, the town could do the abatement, which means the town goes in, spends its own money and fixes whatever the issues there are with the property. We would then put a lien on her property for whatever the amount it was to do that fixing. And then if the property was sold, we'd, get paid the amount we invested into it. Or we could potentially foreclose on the property and, be owners of that property potentially, if we wanted to. And so that's one option. The second option, and probably the more likely one, given kind of some of the stuff that's already happened, is that the bank who holds the mortgage on the property can do all the work and add it to the mortgage balance, and then potentially foreclose on that mortgage balance if it's not recuperated. And so that's probably more likely to happen if, Ms. Yoder doesn't go ahead and do the necessary repairs she's supposed to. But those are really kind of the two things we're waiting on, the two possibilities if the permits aren't pulled here pretty soon. So any questions on the Yoder matter before I proceed on to the next one?
Yeah, I think this board wasn't steeped in the Yoder matter earlier. So Benita Yoder's house is in from Second and Park. It's right next to Trustee Delman's house.
209 Second.
And it's not cared for since the flood.
Oh, I think I know.
Yeah.
So we had given her notice to abate and she went to court over it.
Yeah, she's an attorney.
Yeah, I think that's a short and sweet way to put it, but it's been a long saga. I can tell you that, and it's good to have finally a good result at the end.
Yeah,
Okay, I
she's
know
not
exactly
supposed-
what you're
she's not supposed to be living in there. There's no heat. They're just not supposed to be living there.
No one's supposed to be living there. It doesn't have a certificate of occupancy.
It's foreclosure. Did you know that, Brandon? It's listed.
I didn't
as a
know
foreclosure.
I did not know it was in foreclosure, but what I can say is that is not uncommon for the past 5 years. It has been in and out of foreclosure kind of nonstop for the past 5 years. And so it's not terribly surprising. It doesn't mean that, that it eventually will be foreclosed.
Yeah, okay, thank you. What else you got for us?
Yeah, so I got one more matter that I think the board should be aware of, and that's regarding the public health order for COVID we've had in place for some time now at the state level. And despite all the talk about potentially rescinding those orders, it was actually expanded for the first time in some time on the 11th of November by Governor Polis. And what that new executive order D 2022-004 did was expand the exact disaster emergency to include RSV, influenza, and other respiratory illness due to serious increases in infection and hospitalization throughout the state. The practical effect of this for us, it's not a lot, but one thing it does do is it expands the potential ability for local government employees to take up to 80 hours of supplemental public health emergency leave under the Health, Family, and Workplaces Act. This amount was already allotted for 2021 for COVID. That has now expanded to also include RSV, influenza, and other respiratory illnesses. It doesn't mean you get additional time. It just means that you take it for things other than COVID. You take it for those other types of diseases. But it does, that's the real effect of this for us. Probably not going to have a large effect on the day-to-day operations of the town. But I think more importantly, just to kind of let you know that, this is a major impact that's going on throughout the state. And another client I represent, the city of Los Animas, had to cancel meetings for almost 2 weeks because they couldn't get a quorum together because of COVID and RSV or respiratory illness effects. both among the staff and the city council, including having city councilors in the hospital from this. And so it's pretty serious out there. And I just wanted to let the board know that this is going on. It may not be, depending on how this winter goes, the last, kind of change in the state public health order, but certainly a major and somewhat unexpected one that recently happened. So any questions on that?
Thank you for that, Brandon. And I just want to say, if anybody in your house is sick, if you don't feel well, but you don't feel sick enough to listening, it's normal. Don't take any chances. That's why we have this. The worst is work so hard to. So take advantage of it.
All right, well, that's all for me.
A summary of action items.
Okay, I have, we're to correct resolution 2022-100 to correct the project description. We're going to request Tierra, the contractor Tierra, I didn't get all of their name, to amend the scope to correct the not to exceed amount for resolution 2022-106. Additional discussion is needed on solar financing to include historical perspective and enterprise status before a resolution is brought forward. Clarion is to present the comp plan on the December 5th. That is an agenda item or a potential special meeting. Reinstate PCDC quarterly sprint meetings in 2023. Gear up for Administrator Simonson's annual review. I'm supposed to poll the Board of Trustees for their availability for next week's special meeting on affordable housing. The board would like to see Think Generators plans in a future meeting and move forward with the survey on Apple Valley property. Did I miss anything?
I had a couple little ones. The sales tax question and adjusted for inflation. High school sports teams for the floats. The public health, that'll be internal for me. I have something early on. Oh, getting those museum financial statements distributed to the trustees. And then replacing the whereas statement in the Planet Bluegrass.
Yep.
And then
It'll-
we're
Go ahead.
talking long line and water shares so that we might make 100% that.
Brandon, anything from your end?
Yeah, Victoria, you just got the errata items in the Planet Bluegrass resolutions. Is that right? It sounded like you were addressing that.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Is there a motion to move into executive session?
And Cassie has asked if she could stay for this.
I move into executive session pursuant CRS section 24-6-4024A and 24-6-4024E for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiation, developing strategies for negotiations, and instructing negotiators with regard to the lease of town-owned property at 4100 Newton Highway, Lyons, Colorado.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
You? Any discussion? No.
The motion passes unanimously.
You?
And I will send the link right now to you, Brandon, and Cassie and Paul Godak.
Oh, Paul won't be attending.